Tar pits are incredible sites for uncovering the remains of prehistoric animals. These pits form when large quantities of crude oil seep through rocks from deep underground and pool on the surface, creating deposits of asphalt. This sticky substance can become a death trap for unwary animals, which get ensnared and doomed to starve or die of dehydration or exhaustion, unable to free themselves from the goop. The death of one animal often led to the formation of a predator trap, as the stench of decay attracted opportunistic carnivores to these deadly pits, where they became stuck themselves. While this is bad news for the animals, it is fantastic for paleontologists, as countless astonishing discoveries of prehistoric creatures have been unearthed tens of thousands of years after their demise. Although a few notable active tar pits can be found across the globe, the most extensively studied one is La Brea, situated in the heart of Los Angeles. This world-famous site preserves the remains of numerous extinct animal species that became trapped in the sticky asphalt over the past 50,000 years, offering us a unique window into prehistory. For over a century, people have been excavating a wide range of extraordinary finds from La Brea, with over 3.5 million fossil specimens recovered from the pits, representing more than 600 different species. So let's take a closer look at 5 of the most astonishing discoveries made at the La Brea tar pits. We'll start with the fantastic fossils of American camels that have been found here. Amazingly, yes, there did indeed used to be camels in North America. In fact, camels can actually trace back their origins to the continent. They evolved here first and then later dispersed to other parts of the world, before disappearing in North America about 13,000 years ago. Prehistoric American camels were incredibly diverse in lifestyles and anatomies for a long time, with various gazelle-like forms and even some with especially long necks that fed like giraffes. But the species that has been found in the La Brea tar pits is Camelops hesternus, a name that translates to camel face of yesterday. These beasts were pretty sizable, standing about 2.3 meters tall at the shoulder, or around 7.7 feet. That's taller than a modern dromedary, or one-humped camel. Plus, Camelops also had a proportionally longer neck than its modern relatives. So the yesterday's camels would have been truly impressive animals, towering over the people of this time. Something that was probably missing from this prehistoric camel's anatomy, however, was the iconic hump, or humps. There's no evidence from the Camelops skeletons that have been found suggesting they supported fatty humps along their backs. Despite how iconic the camel humps are though, it's actually not that unusual to think Camelops would have lacked them, since it's only in the modern Bactrian and dromedary camels that humps are present. The South American vicuña and the guanaco, and their domesticated descendants, the alpacas and llamas, are also members of the camel family, Camelidae, and these camelids do not have humps either. Since remains found in tar pits unfortunately do not preserve soft tissues, we therefore just don't know if humps were present in Camelops, but the skeletal evidence seems to suggest not. Evidence from the chemistry and wear patterns of their teeth suggests that Camelops was a pretty flexible plant eater that consumed a variety of food sources depending on what was available to it where it was living. The lengthy neck of this ancient camel would have helped it reach up into taller plants, making it an efficient feeder. Yesterday's camel was also potentially a rather fast runner, with long legs that would have made it effective at moving at speed. There's also some potential evidence suggesting they were herd-living creatures, which makes sense considering the group behaviours of living camels. Camelops fossils have been found across much of the western US, and even range as far north as Alaska and as far south as Honduras. The fossils of these magnificent mammals from La Brea include at least 40 different individuals retrieved from the tar pits. As these animals became stuck in the viscous substance and ended up perishing, their decomposing carcasses would likely have been some of the delicious, tempting targets of this predator trap, luring in carnivores to their demise. Thanks to the immensely detailed preservation of the bones here, a lot of valuable information has been learned from the La Brea Camelops, such as one study that looked at the brain structure of the camel from a fossil that preserved the brain case. A plaster cast was made of the space where the brain once was, and the scientists found out that this prehistoric species actually had features of the brain that were previously only identified in living camels, shedding light on how these amazing animals evolved and showing that by between 44 and 11,000 years ago, they had reached a modern stage in terms of their brain size and complexity. As the last surviving American camel, Camelops would also have encountered the first humans to reach the Americas. Indeed, there's a site in Alberta preserving the remnants of horse and camel bones with butcher marks clearly inflicted by human tools some 13,300 years ago. Other localities across the continent have been identified too, though with less certainty. But there's no doubt that yesterday's camels would have provided a good food source for ancient humans in the Americas. What an incredible animal to discover in the tar pits then. American camels were fascinating creatures, and would have been astonishing to see in the flesh. I'd have loved to have seen one of these towering beasts while they were alive, but finding their beautifully preserved bones in tar pits is still pretty great. Next up, the La Brea tar pits have also yielded the bones of a giant kind of flesh-eating bird, Teratornis. This is a member of the Teratornithidae family, exceptionally big birds of prey that lived from around 25 million years ago up until just 10,000 years ago. Teratorns are most famous for including the enormous Argentavis magnificens, which lived between about 9 and 7 million years ago in Argentina and was one of the biggest birds to ever fly, with a wingspan potentially reaching more than 6 meters across, or over 19.7 feet. Although that's not the largest known wingspan of any prehistoric bird, that title goes to Pelagornis, a massive extinct seabird with pseudo-teeth, it's still a lot bigger than the largest living flying bird, the wandering albatross, with a maximum wingspan of 12 feet. Teratornis merriami is the species that's known from the tar pits at La Brea, and they have been found here in great abundance, with more than 100 specimens emerging from the sticky black asphalt since it started to be excavated. Though not as giant as Argentavis, these were still impressive birds, with wingspans measuring 11 to 12 feet and standing heights of around 2.5 feet. Armed with those deadly looking beaks, this is one prehistoric bird you would not want to mess with. Early depictions of Teratornis, not long after it was first named in 1909, tended to illustrate this animal as essentially a giant vulture, complete with a bold head and neck that they could use to probe into carcasses without getting their feathers all messy, and which also aided in thermoregulation. This idea did make sense, considering that these unlucky Teratorns were most likely getting stuck in the tar pits as they arrived here to scavenge on carcasses from other trapped animals. Plus, their fearsome looking hooked beaks were rather vulture-like in appearance, and seemed suited to ripping into bodies. Additionally, the relatively few efforts that have been made to classify the Teratorns tend to recover them as close relatives of the New World vultures. So it made sense to consider them as probably specialized scavengers, and to think of Teratorns in general as essentially giant prehistoric vultures. Hence, many reconstructions give them vulture or condor-like feather patterns. But this vision of the Teratorns has since been upturned, with research in the 1980s and since then finding that they were not really suited to a specialized scavenging lifestyle. It turns out the anatomy of the skull as a whole is actually more consistent with an active hunting mode of life, being much broader and more flexible compared to a vulture skull. They actually have quite kinetic skulls, meaning the gape of the mouth was able to expand significantly thanks to loose joints, perfect for swallowing small, live prey items whole. Researchers have also found that Teratornis probably spent a good deal of time stalking its prey on the ground, as its legs and feet were well suited to walking, rather than for striking and grabbing at prey like other raptors that attack from the air. Of course, Teratornis, although it probably wasn't a specialized scavenging bird, wouldn't have turned down a free meal when offered one. It's clear that these animals were still attracted to the carcasses of other creatures trapped in the tar pits, which is how they ended up there themselves. Teratornis is another fascinating, albeit somewhat intimidating, creature found in tar pits, and thanks to the amazing preservation of their bones, we've learned a great deal about how they lived and hunted. Next, we couldn't talk about tar pit animals without featuring one of the most iconic species found at La Brea, the direwolf. The direwolf is the most commonly discovered mammal from the tar pits, with over 4,000 specimens recovered from the sticky grave. These big dogs lived between 125,000 and 10,000 years ago, and although they're called wolves and are indeed often portrayed as oversized grey wolves, most famously in Game of Thrones, recent genetic work has revealed a much more interesting story. A study published in 2021 extracted ancient DNA from 5 direwolf specimens from various locations across the US, and sequenced ancient proteins from a fragment of collagen preserved in a La Brea specimen. Using this genetic data, they found that the direwolf was not related to modern wolves at all, and was, in fact, the last surviving member of an ancient canid lineage native to the New World. According to this discovery, the direwolf line split from all other dogs 5.7 million years ago, and the close anatomical similarities to modern wolves were the result of convergent evolution. Due to this genetic distinctiveness, they classify the direwolf in a separate genus from the modern wolf. Rather than belonging to Canis, the direwolf is now known as Oenoscion dirus. However, there's another twist in this tale. You've probably seen news reports claiming that a de-extinction company has revived the direwolf. This is not true. No ancient DNA from direwolves was put into these animals, as the misleading headlines would have you infer. What they actually did was change a few genes in living grey wolves to give them some features they believe direwolves might have had. And as we've just seen, modern wolves are not close relatives of direwolves at all. So these engineered canids are simply grey wolves with some tweaked genes, not substitutes for the real animals in any meaningful way. In a study undertaken by researchers at the company, which has not yet been peer-reviewed, so take this with a grain of salt, they claim that direwolves actually belong to a hybrid lineage, with around 2/3 of their ancestry deriving from a lineage that includes the wolf, coyote plus dhole, and the other third was from a group containing the South American canids, such as the maned wolf. Again, this would show that the direwolf is a very genetically distinct animal from the modern wolf, and it looks like the dog evolutionary tree might be far more complex than we'd appreciated. Oh, and also George R.R. Martin is an author on this paper for some reason. Just thought I'd mention that. Anyway, the specimens of Oenoscion dirus at La Brea date from between about 40 to 10,000 years ago, and thanks to the extraordinary sample size provided by all these specimens across this range of time, scientists have been able to track some intriguing evolutionary and behavioural changes in these animals. One of the trends they found was an increase and decrease in the size of these dogs over thousands of years, correlating with changes in climate. Warmer periods saw larger direwolves, while colder ones saw a slight shrinking, perhaps related to how abundant prey sources were at these times. Another interesting trend through time is the differences in how worn their teeth were. A sample of direwolves dating to 15,000 years ago showed much more heavily worn and fractured teeth than those living 12,000 years ago, suggesting that the older dogs were probably consuming more bone than the younger ones. Of course, one of the best ways to get a sense for the variability of these dogs is to go and have a look at the direwolf wall at the tar pits. I've been lucky enough to see it in person, and this display really is a fantastic way to illustrate individual variability in these animals, with 400 skulls suspended for you to examine. The remarkable abundance of direwolves at La Brea, significantly outnumbering all other mammals at the site, might be explained as a result of their social behaviour. Known as the carcass domination hypothesis, this states that the big social carnivores, such as direwolves, American lions, and saber-toothed cats, are found most frequently at La Brea because they arrived here in big groups that pushed out the other carnivores attracted to the stench of decay, and subsequently were the most likely to then become trapped themselves. So, although we haven't yet brought the direwolf back from extinction, the La Brea tar pits have yielded a great deal of invaluable information about these incredible animals, giving us a window into a fascinating long-lost species. For our fourth strange creature in tar, let's take a look at one of the giant ground sloth species that's been uncovered at La Brea. 3 different kinds of sloths have turned up in the sticky asphalt pits of LA, but the biggest species, and the most common, is called Paramylodon harlani, Harlan's ground sloth. These were some seriously sizable sloths, with body lengths reaching about 3 meters or 9.8 feet, and shoulder heights of 1.8 meters, about 5.9 feet, and weights of up to 3,000 pounds. The giant sloth species has been found at locations across North America, and even down to Guatemala, existing from about 4.9 million years ago until just 12,000 years ago. La Brea is a goldmine for Paramylodon remains, with more than 70 examples of these sloths found here, and at least 30 of them retaining skulls. This was a robust species, being very heavily built and even possessing specialized bony armor embedded within the skin. These bony pebble-like structures, known as osteoderms, would have helped protect the animals and made their hides incredibly tough. A particularly remarkable example of osteoderms still embedded within sloth skin was even discovered in a cave in Chile, where the cold and dry air preserved this section, belonging to a relative of Paramylodon. Hundreds of osteoderms from Paramylodon itself have been found in the tar pits at La Brea, highlighting what a wonderfully strange creature this really was. A giant, armoured, ground-living sloth. Since Paramylodon only died so relatively recently, like many of the creatures found at La Brea, it would have coexisted with early humans on the North American continent. Indeed, there's even some potential direct evidence for interactions between this sloth and ancient people, such as trackways found in White Sands National Park in New Mexico that appear to show a group of humans stalking a giant ground sloth, possibly Paramylodon itself, as its fossils have been found here and the prints look consistent with its foot anatomy. Some of the human prints actually superimpose the sloth prints, indicating that they were made at the same time. Plus, there are sharp direction changes to the sloth trackway when the human prints are present, showing that this animal was clearly aware it was being hunted and was reacting to the presence of these people. The discovery of so many Paramylodon remains at La Brea has again provided scientists with an incredible opportunity to study this magnificent creature's anatomy, and even to learn about how this sloth grew, since a range of different aged individuals have been found in the pits. However, the abundance of the sloths in the asphalt probably does not reflect much about their social structures, unlike with the predators found here, since the Paramylodon remains represent accumulations over many hundreds to thousands of years, not mass strandings in the tar. Paramylodon harlani is therefore another amazing and rather strange animal found in the La Brea tar pits, which have preserved their immense skeletons in stunning detail for thousands of years. And finally, we come to the La Brea Woman, the only human to have so far been discovered in the tar pits. Now, yes, I know this is called 5 Strange Prehistoric Creatures, but I mean, I'd argue humans are pretty strange. Have you ever seen one? Upright standing primates with reduced hair coverage that put themselves in clothing and can use tools, and those massive energetically demanding brains that take literal decades to develop. Sounds strange to me. The La Brea Woman story is a fascinating one. In 1914, excavations at one of the tar pits yielded a complete human skull, along with other parts of the skeleton. This individual was identified as a woman who died between the ages of 18 and 25, and calibrated radiocarbon dating of her bones in 2016 revealed that she had lived more than 10,000 years ago, between 10,220 and 10,250 years ago to be exact. She was small in stature and would have stood at about 4'8" to 10 inches tall. More than 100 years after her discovery, the La Brea Woman is still the only human to have been found in the tar pits. Ever since she was unearthed, there has been much speculation surrounding her fate, including suggestions that she died of a sinus infection, that she accidentally fell in and became trapped, that she was the first known homicide victim in Los Angeles history, or that she was deliberately interred here, in a ceremonial reburial. The hypothesis that the La Brea Woman was murdered came about when researchers in the 1980s identified what they considered to be fractures across this poor ancient human's skull. They concluded that some sort of heavy blow to the head was probably her cause of death, though what exactly struck her was unknown. Was it an accidental collision with a hard object, an animal, or was she the victim of another human attacking her, and was her body disposed of in the tar to hide the crime? The murder hypothesis has since fallen out of favour, however, as it's possible that the apparent fractures on the skull could be attributed to the movement of the asphalt underground over many years, scraping other items against the bone to create these cracks. Seemingly supporting the idea of a deliberate placement of her body in the pit, a stone grinding tool, several seashells, and the remains of a domestic dog's skeleton were also recovered from near the woman, which some considered evidence that she had been buried along with these items and the animal. However, calibrated radiocarbon dating of the dog's skeleton has since confirmed that it's much younger than the woman, dying some 3,250 to 3,400 years ago, so its presence here doesn't have anything to do with a deliberate burial of a human body. The shells and stone grinder can also not be definitely associated with the Brea Woman's body either, since the movement of the asphalt over thousands of years could have brought these items closer to the woman, when they were actually deposited in the pit at a different time. Interestingly, analysis of the stable isotope composition of the woman's bone collagen revealed what her diet was like. It showed that she had exclusively been eating terrestrial organisms, with no evidence of any protein from marine sources, which is intriguing considering how close to the ocean she must have been living. Even 10,000 years ago, the shoreline was not much further away from the pits than it is today, and there's much evidence showing that ancient Americans were relying on marine resources, and had reached California's Channel Islands by boat long before La Brea Woman lived. The La Brea Woman is therefore another fascinating discovery from the tar pits, although there has been some controversy surrounding the display of a cast of her skull, as well as the reconstruction of her possible appearance. Considering the ethics of displaying human remains and prioritizing the wishes of indigenous groups who share genetic heritage with these ancient people should always be paramount, particularly in the case of people who have been historically disenfranchised, and so I hope I've been able to present this in a suitable way. There's clearly a lot more to be learned about this remarkable 10,000-year-old woman. Hopefully, a resolution to her story can be uncovered one day, and we can discover who she might have been, how she came to be entombed in the tar pits, and why she's the only person who's been found here. Well, there we have it. 5 prehistoric animals found trapped in tar pits. I hope you enjoyed learning about all these amazing finds that show just how invaluable tar pits are for discovering more about the past life on our planet. Please do let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and tell me if you'd like some more videos about tar pit fossils too. There are so many more strange and wonderful creatures from La Brea that I haven't featured in this video, such as the iconic saber-toothed cats and mammoths found at the site, so there's plenty more to talk about. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my other channel, 7 Days of Science. Over on this channel, my co-presenters and I make weekly videos covering all the most fascinating science news of the past week. So if you'd like a good way to keep up to date with the latest discoveries, you might like what we do over there. We also have a Patreon page where you can support us in return for some fun bonus content. Please do like this video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it, and be sure to press that bell icon so you don't miss our next upload, and so you can learn more about our world, its history, and the wonderful life that surrounds us all.